Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Practice Life podcast. I'm calling today's episode Flip the Script on Generosity. Oh, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a good one. I've been thinking about this one for a while. So, first of all, we're releasing this episode on what is known as Boxing Day, December 26th, traditionally. And, doing a little Google search, it was Boxing Day seems to have come in the time of Queen Victoria in England in the 1800s. And it was the day after Christmas when the wealthy would box up gifts and leftovers and bring them out to either their staff or people in the village or people who were less fortunate. So it was meant to be an expression of generosity. Over the years, it has expanded, and it is celebrated with food and games and I suppose generosity as well. But I thought it's the perfect day, Boxing Day, to talk about flipping the script on generosity, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. I was an observant little girl. I watched my mom. I observed her. I put two and two together. I formed conclusions. And I was a big one for saying why. And the response was usually because you're supposed to, or because that's what's done, or things like that. But I'd be like, why? Because things didn't add up to me. I watched the concept of generosity from, and mostly the matriarchal peeps. They were, and it was of a time, so this wasn't unique to my family, but I saw women get the short end of the stick. They had to make the food, serve the food, clear the table, do the dishes, put away the leftovers. And I watched men have a much more relaxed social time. And I know that's not true of everybody, so maybe this is just way too sweeping, but it was pretty much the way I saw women roll in the 60s and 70s and maybe even 80s and maybe still. And the training was, as a little girl, that you need to be nice. You aren't the center of the universe. Don't be loud. Don't be boisterous. Be cooperative. Have good manners. Be agreeable. And most of all, be generous. Be generous. And what I saw happen with that concept in, the old structure, the old structure that is probably dismantling right before our very eyes right now. What I saw was lots of women who were just constantly in service to others and were either depressed or resentful or depleted or all three. So I'm going to say that again. Here was the result of their unending and it wasn't forced. What would I say? It was expected. Their expected generosity was sacrifice of self at the expense of self. And it was they would end up resentful, depleted, or just depressed. And in that training that we all received, if you're a woman of a certain age, there is no question you got some of that training. There is no question being good meant being generous at expense of self. And that really was the training. And that was the observation. And what always befuddled me was, why do I not see more happiness? If generosity is so good, to put yourself last and to give it away to everybody else, why don't I see more happiness if it's supposed to be so good? And it just didn't add up for me. And, and still doesn't, because that was the patriarchal concept of female generosity, and where it's expected. And you have a certain role, which is, give until you have no blood left in your veins. And so I've spent, because I had such an up close and personal, I had observed it so closely in my own mom, who did what she thought was expected of her. That was the training. It wasn't like she made it up. That was the training, and she was dutiful that way. And she didn't see another path open to her that wouldn't have involved terrible, terrible guilt or, self-recrimination. So there was no way she could have broken out of those chains. But me, being on the cusp of the culture changing, more opportunities coming for women, and my curious little what's going on here mind, I just kept saying, I don't know. That doesn't add up to me. That does not add up to me. That looks like the wrong way to move through the world, the self-abusive way to move through the world. And I see no happy trail walking the path that way. So I've had a lot of time to think about this, and I've thought about this over the years. And I also want to say, because I grew up with that training, I'm always having to overwrite that pattern for myself too, because it's landed in my bones. It's landed in my bones. But here's what I think real generosity looks like. And this is a big script flipped, my friends. This is big. This, in fact, if you've been indoctrinated and brainwashed the other way, this is going to land on you like acid on your skin. When I say authentic generosity begins and ends with absolute, utter, and complete devotion to self. Generosity begins and ends with self. Oh, I know. Your cells are like, what? No, you can't be selfish. That's so selfish. That's so selfish. In fact, when you look up self-love, when you Google definitions of it, like I was trying to find another one word for it, and all the definitions and synonyms were like ego, selfish, all the things. So it's very much ingrained, but I'm going to flip the script, and I'm going to say, make this bold statement that when generosity is utter devotion to self and what's best for self and what makes self happy and what feels right and good and in alignment for self, when that generosity energy is directed towards self in a powerful, singular stream, it begins to overflow. And only then can we be authentically generous with others. I mean, that just makes sense to me anymore. First, we have to flood our mission. Our mission in life needs to be to flood that generosity toward ourselves, just devoted to ourselves, beginning and ending, flooding that generosity in every way possible. Generosity, compassion, support, aid, generosity of spirit, generosity of time, generosity of love, generosity of material goods flow towards self first. And once we are filled to the brim with our own devotion, with our own generous energy directed towards self, then we have something authentic to share. And now we're not resentful. We're not depleted. We're not depressed, because we're living from a place of putting ourselves first, loving ourselves most, and then we have something of real value to offer. We can't wait to be generous with the people in our lives, the people who cross our path, the other humans and creatures on the planet. We can't wait to be generous because we've been so generous. We're flowing that generosity to ourselves at all times. So that is what I call flipping the script on generosity. And it is worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about to see if, as this new year comes, if there's a way for you to flip the script for yourself and find the power of that energy and see if you can make authentic generosity a an up level for yourself in 2025. I'm so glad you joined me. I hope I gave you something to think about. I've been thinking about it since I was a tiny little girl. I've been thinking about it for a long time. Listen, I also want to extend to you an invitation. If you go to sherrysalata.com/free network, you will get an invite to my free live end of the year event. It's called Align Your Inner Compass for an Inspired New Year, December 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern. So sherrysalata.com/free network. I hope you join us because I love gathering for those kinds of conversations. And as always, thanks for listening.